Bring it back to studio. We now focus onto our Kickstarter, looking at Uganda's oil sector and the management of expectations. I know that many of you have had that news that there's been an extension of the oil production, but do not worry, come rain, come sunshine, Uganda will be an oil-producing country. So we've got to rethink the health and economic impact of that oil production as it does take maturity and Uganda's oil boom, as well as related concerns. I am Priscilla Regina Delwaga. Welcome to this discussion. Backbone of it is that Uganda is currently drilling new oil wells in the Kingfisher and Tilenga projects with the goal of producing oil for the first time in 2025. Now, when you look at the public services in Africa, we are often having poor quality of service delivery in this regards. This can be attributed to the low levels of financing, and COP29 is focusing on financing. Now, this can also be leading to a lot more challenges as far as oil production focus is concerned for Uganda. More than 20 years since African countries have committed themselves to the Abuja Declaration to spend at least 15% of their budgets on health, only 2 countries, including South Africa, have been able to meet this target. And even them, they've been able to do so barely. For us here in Uganda, the guests that I have in studio with me, we've had this discussion before of surely education and health. Why are they not getting this Abuja Declaration 15% on focus on their budgets? Additionally, $2 billion in contracts has been awarded to Ugandan companies, henceforth employment potential for the country's locals. However, with the new oil drills and the oil wells in search, it begs the question, what is the impact of this on Uganda's economy? What is the impact of this on Uganda's health? And what is the impact of this on Uganda's environment? Well, to tap into the minds of this debate, I do have Dr. Fred Muhumuza, who's an economist, joining us for this conversation. Glad to have you. I will allow them their salutations. Alana Kembabazi is also part of this debate. We also do have Mr. Brian Luwetute, CEO Aggrey, Uganda, that is part of this conversation. And so I'm going to allow Dr. here, who's penning something we have not yet talked about, to greet our audience, and that will continue on forth.
Good morning, our viewers and listeners out there. Hope you had a good night and you were using the right kind of energy. And people around you are going to school. They're not among those who lost it out. Not, I don't want to say dropped it. Yeah. Dropped out, but sometimes you can still get informal education. So it's not that
adult education,
even those younger ones, not that those who left have actually missed it. Yesterday I was talking to a mother whose child felt she was too old. Indeed, she was old, and then COVID added more years. She refused to come back to school, but is now in Dubai. So it's not all lost. Yeah. And so I'm hoping the world sees opportunities, and we can see those opportunities as it creates them.
Okay, Alana.
Good to be back, and I'm glad Dr. Muhumuza said on a positive note. I think that there's a lot to complain about, but also a lot to be grateful for right now in the country's trajectory. And I'm hoping today's discussion talks about that, and also how to make sure we're actually making our wonderful natural resources work for people. Okay. That's the whole point.
All right. Brian Luwetute, CEO Aggrey Uganda, thank you so much for being with us.
Priscilla, thank you for having me. The company is called Aggrey Yields, just a little correction.
All right.
I am here to speak about basically deforestation and EUDR. In the context of the oil sector, we know that the oil comes out of the ground. It's a carbon emitter, but we need forests to make sure that the carbon is sunk there so that we don't have a warmer climate. Specifically, today I want to focus on the current environment around the EU deforestation registration law that targets our agriculture sector. As you know, Uganda is a major coffee exporter, and what this EUDR law focuses on is to make sure that people do not use farms in places where forest existed before. because we need to make sure we mitigate the effects of climate change.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Now, of course, we do have last week a group of young people heading to the parliament in protest of the construction of the EACOP pipeline from here to Tanga. And of course, their quest was all about environmental protection. This is a continued debate that we have been seeing all throughout since the agreements were signed between Uganda and Tanzania. It begs the question, with the presence of the assessment papers that were done in there, why is it that people feel dissatisfied yet as far as environmental protection is concerned?
Actually, I think the biggest issue we have generally in the public space is lack of information. What we know is COP29 is trying to address the issue of net zero. What that means is that as a country, if you're emitting so much greenhouse emissions, there must be a carbon sink somewhere so that the temperature variation does not change. You know that we've had a lot of issues around drought and excessive rainfall. What causes that are issues around these gases. So it's all about striking a balance between the two in the context of making sure that as poor countries, we utilize the God-given resources we have in a responsible manner that does not endanger the environment.
Okay. All right. Alana, oil exploration, oil production has been a conversation that our leader and different politicians have been using to excite Ugandans about 2025. And it also comes around the curve of, getting into elections in 2026. But it begs the question, in as much as it's been a leading conversation on social lines, on economic lines, on environmental lines within the region, what are the actual changes that you have realized have come ever since this became a reality for us in Uganda and a possibility?
Yes, so the Initiative for Social and Economic Rights, ISA, where work has always looked at it from a socio-economic justice perspective. And Uganda is blessed. We're talking about COP29 right now, and we know that there's a real discussion around climate justice, around common but differentiated responsibility. Those who created the climate crisis, many of African countries, they really did not, should be paying a whole lot more, right? But there's also discussion about how do you build back better, how do you build back in a green way, and we have lots of natural resources, not just oil. In Uganda, we have gold, we have minerals critical to energy transition, cobalt, copper, lithium, rare earth minerals. And so it's very important that we look at the whole package of things and say, okay, how do we harness these natural resources? Because you need to buy them. God blessed you with them. How do you harness them for your people? And of course the planet, but you cannot forget people, the people you serve, particularly the underserved, the vulnerable. Right before we came on, we were having a discussion amongst us about the utter lack of social protection in this country. The fact that when you get to a certain age, you're in panic, when you can no longer handle yourself. What is the buffer when things don't go well? And Dr. Muhumuza is very passionate, more passionate, I think, than I am, which is rare, on this particular issue. And of course, you talk about resources and so forth. But if you have so many resources, and we're talking about healthcare, should your people go without healthcare? Should you have a hospital where there are no drugs? Should you have what you were talking about, someone dropping out of school and going to Dubai, when you could invest in your public education? In other words, if you are a child of a wealthy man, should you go without basics? And that's the challenge we are posing to Ugandans. You have natural resources, and it's to our leaders. Oil, and I'm glad there's even more discussion around oil, because it used to be clandestine. And now there's some oil here, and now we're realizing we have it's a finite resource, but we have good results. We have gold, we have copper, we have all of these things. And if you look at Africa as a whole, the financing up, for example, for education is pretty huge. But from a low estimate, I think at least 2/3 of the revenues that we need to finance basic primary education, right? The revenues would cover 2/3 of that. And so looking at the African continent, because Africa, this issue is not just Uganda, Africa as a whole is failing to wake up to the fact that you have resources that are there that should be well managed and stewarded to help your people. And so when we hear about oil in Uganda, we begin to ask the critical questions. We know that we've had some oil already, we know some revenues, we know people don't know about it, some money comes in. what is our plan to help our people?
Okay.
Can we have a certain portion going to these public services, like health education?
Well, your debate is very interesting, because now when I look to, for example, our neighbors in the Democratic Republic of Congo with the gold and other minerals they do have, look at how the country is. And you're saying these minerals, the resources gotten out of these minerals should focus on the country's development, especially in a social factor. When you look at the oil-producing countries up north of Africa, the likes of Niger, Nigeria, and that whole corner there, they do have the oil. They do, produce the oil. But look at the state of the citizens within countries. So it begs the question: what is the salvation for Uganda in light of those examples? This is why I want to bring in a doctor. Financing has brought this, pipeline construction into reality, and financing at the same time seems to be costing Ugandans. But what are the changes that are expected on a positive and a negative side when it comes to the economic evaluation contribution to oil production of this in Uganda?
Yeah, thank you very much. Really, oil is a global resource, as we always say. So its financing, its pricing are all driven by global interests out there. They can even decide for you your oil will be left in the ground. No matter how hard you want to get it out, the world has decided your oil will be left in the ground, and could be for many reasons. We don't know what you'll do with your revenues, and they can really say because of climate issues, but also they can just will not finance you. Now, it is very clear that Uganda cannot finance its oil investments. We have to rely on international finance. And even the partners we bring here, you'll have Total. Even Total still has to go and look for international finance to come and invest here. So you are really playing in an international space. So many times when I hear people saying Uganda has its oil, it is our oil, I'm like, hey, wait a minute. Cranes is our team. But Cranes is not it's the national team. It has to play at Africa level and global levels. The referees you find there, the guys who made us lose here, is it them who made us lose? You'll never have your own Ugandans advocating on your own team. So we've got to reach a level and appreciate that oil sits in that space. Okay. And once you understand the global template, then you say, where is my space? So Cranes is in AFCON. Because we understood our space, who do I beat? Go and beat them flat, it's going to be a fair game, but you must first of all understand. Our team left yesterday for Congo, Brazzaville, one of the oil-rich countries out there, but which has a lot of poverty. So you want to get into that space, you won't even set the price. So when I hear Ugandans failing to appreciate that global context, and then we even set timelines, our oil is going to flow, this is what we're going to do with it. It hasn't flown since we expected it 2012,
even that timeline presently has been extended.
So the price is going to be low because now Europe is getting into cold environments, and Europeans mind about their people. So they need a lot of heating. So they have already agreed the oil barrel price must not go beyond this if our people are to afford it. In Uganda, we may not care about some of these things, but they care. So they will even allow Russia to keep sailing, knowing very well it's going to use this money to do drones and do all sorts of havoc. But because we are more mindful about our people. Now you come back and say, if oil prices are at $70, who is going to invest in Uganda's crude oil pipeline at that rate? Because maybe you're going to raise finances from there. And people would be watching and saying, Uganda's oil, how much have they said is there, lasting 25 years? So should I do an investment of 4 billion in the pipeline? Will I recover my money? That mathematics comes in. And I think that is where our challenge comes in on the financing side. So when I hear young people, they are demonstrating about the pipeline is engineering work. That has been ticked. It's going to be a heated thing. It's not going to emit heat outside. The engineers have ability to do that, and they have done all that. Even when it's going through swamps, it will be like, as somebody has said, the flask. The flask is hot inside, but you don't feel the heat out there. They have done that design. So the engineering part is no problem. We now need to focus on the financing, but the financing must come take into consideration those global dynamics. Trump is back. Is anybody reading the script that he has written? Talking about climate change. Trump is like, don't tell me climate change. Now, you are here saying, oh, we're going to get some climate financing. Who is going to put the money in there?
When he himself is saying, I need US out of this Paris Agreement 2015.
The biggest emitters, 70% of the emissions are coming from these big countries, China, India, and the US. All of them are not in Bako. They have tactfully not attended. So that conversation is about squirrels discussing a forest. What can a squirrel do to a forest? It's already...
Just run through the forest.
Exactly. So
but then speaking on that discussion, if we should reflect back on COP28, transition away from fossil fuels to cleaner energies or greener energies, where does that leave us in terms of oil production in the global market that is transitioning to in a different direction?
It won't be transitioning. That's the main point. So Uganda should know that for the next 2, 3, 4 decades, fossil fuel is still going to be a driver, including those by the ones who are in 70% of the emission space, not being in these conversations, sends a signal to you that the world is still going to need oil. So now Uganda should not be worried of, hey, my oil may not be needed. It's still going to be needed. Now engage the other conversations. As we've said, the technical aspects of making sure the environment is done, we need to tick those, and I think we have done well on that area. Now we are stuck with the financing, which is another conversation. Money has run into Guyana because Guyana's deposits are huge. So people are looking for, where do I invest? And I'm going to get big oil per dollar of investment, but also it's going to be a longer term. So Guyana, which was not known, has moved on. Ghana jumped ahead of us. It is in a worse off state even with their oil. So there are certain things we need to be looking into in the oil space. We shouldn't be worried of people transitioning into other alternative. They are out there, but they are yet to get to a level where they will go to AFCON. So for us now, we should be discussing AFCON. South Sudan, sorry, you are our neighbor, but when it matters of football, leave that one. Let's discuss other things. So for matters of transition, it's going to remain a conversation, but it's not Uganda's threat to our ability to benefit from the oil resource. We should need to focus more on those other concerns.
Okay, all right. Brian, do you like to add something to that?
Yeah, well, I want to put it into context. Yeah, like Elena has mentioned that as a country, we need to put up schools, we need to put up roads, we need infrastructure. We have this natural resource that can get us the money to meet that end. Now, in the context of the problems with the environment and the climate, what do we do? Okay, today I know in Uganda, for example, we have cut down trees to the tune of about 60, a land area of about 68,000 hectares. That as of last year. So, but the thing is, now we know this information. So how do we reverse this trend? The only way to reverse this trend is to plant more trees. Once you plant more trees, you create more carbon sinks. When you create more carbon sinks, then you can use your resource and achieve that net zero target. But guess what? You can also be able to sell this carbon dioxide that you're sinking. The only way to do that is to be able to have the information, digitalization. Whether it is our forests, we must know where they are. We must be able to quantify how much carbon dioxide we emit in a year and how much we sink. If we have, if we are in a net present, a net positive place, then we can sell this on the carbon stock exchange. So it's really about striking a balance between these resources that we have and being realistic about the global trends that are happening today.
I know that there's some harvesting that is happening on ground. So could you talk to us about the realities on ground and what that looks like statistically, and maybe how much we've been able to earn so far?
So the carbon market is quite new in Uganda, and we still have a lot of work to do in understanding how much carbon dioxide, for example, we are sinking in Uganda, how much of our natural forests, how much carbon dioxide we have, and you know, we don't have this credible information, and this is what is needed to be able to monetize on the carbon stock exchange. So a lot of work has to be done in doing geospatial mapping of our forests, in terms of knowing the area, what areas are designated as forests, what areas are we allowed to be able to cut trees in a responsible way, and in such communities, what alternatives are there in terms of energy, because as you know, forests are cut down to make charcoal, for example.
Okay. All right. When you speak of charcoal, of course, presidential directive in that regard, you do have the forces ensuring that they try to curb that, black trade. Relatedly to forests, in today's Daily Monitor, the IGG is storming National Forest Authority offices over forest giveaways. And so when you speak of the things that you're speaking of, and yet the authorities are doing otherwise, it begs the question, what are the interests on the government side in regards to making sure that this is a holistic, conversation and a holistic output as far as oil production and environment is concerned. Now, speaking of environment, part of the environment is land, Alana.
Yes.
It's a very important resource that we also have to consider. Several reports have indicated that oil exploration activities such as the digging of wells and the drilling have already led to a lot of changes in terms of land ownership being one of them, land conflict being another one. The Albertine region now has more cases of land conflict, displacement of people causing influx in terms of migration, and so you're seeing a lot of growth in migration, people having to move. Then that also triggers population growth in nearby areas. That is also triggering land pressure, escalating competition for social services at the end of the day, all which have not really been planned to align with the growth that is happening in the Albertine region. And so it begs the question, how do we align, or how should the government align in consideration of the neighboring communities in order to support the oil production journey that is in Tileng and Kingfisher?
Yeah, I think first of all, it should be seeking free, prior and informed consent. There's certain human rights principles. ISA has a business and human rights program that squarely deals with this. That in the context of any large-scale investment, we cannot sacrifice human rights. They're not suggestions. And they are done, and when you actually follow human rights, usually there's an acceptance, because if you're looking at things like free, prior and informed consent, it would really address some of that. Have you gotten their actual consent, and who are the actual landowners, and how are you dealing with issues of transparency, access to information? It will weed out those who are also trying to play and double game the system. Dr. Muhammad knows a lot about that, I think, from his prior working government. But I do think it's very important that we do respect human rights in this process, and that also people feel that this will benefit them. And that's why we keep saying, are you going to, government, come out clearly and say, we're going to use these natural resources to benefit you in these ways. Indonesia is interesting for it, because for it was like, when we get a windfall, they constructed so many schools. Like, the oil boom was responsible for revolutionizing their public education system. And so when people have a sense of where you are going, they're more likely to come along with you. What we're often seeing is there's some development here and there, maybe they'll move some people, and some of the issues there are court cases around, that have been fighting around what compensation should be. Should they give it to you beforehand, which is what the Constitution requires, or should I just tell you take it or leave it, and then if you don't want, and there are court cases a bit around that. So I think if we follow the rule of law and also recognize that these resources can benefit people, and begin to show people that they'll benefit them by beginning to already be quite clear about how you're going to harness the natural resources, it could address a lot of that. I think that is what has been missing in the discussion, that if I'm a young person in Uganda, I'm hearing about oil, and I'm like, I didn't get the scholarships to go to State House, whatever. Like, how does this benefit me? And I think we need to make sure we are really actually investing in the public services. And being clear that government is going to do that. And respecting human rights and the rule of law, which starts right from the Constitution when you come to issues around land. Yes.
Okay. All right. Dr. Muhumuza, it's been highlighted that in our exploration, there's 2 new areas and regions in which crude has been discovered, and it's going to increase our results that we already have of 6.5 billion barrels. Now, with this discovery, you talked about historically how it's been a conversation 2 decades ago. Oil, we have potential oil, this and that, and begs the question, with this new oil potential, wells and extractions, where do we get to benefit as a country in terms of commercialization of oil?
Actually, you bring a good word of commercialization, because some people think it's not until the oil flows into the market that you begin to earn. Just finding those deposits alone can put you into a position where you begin to earn. Because now some of our partners will list Ugandan oil on their stock exchange, and for them they begin to earn. It's like I buy my plot of land there at 2 million, you come and put an apartment next to me, my plot increases even before me putting any brick. The value increases. So we need to understand the implication of these additional explorations in terms of who is earning from them. Because some of these people, the moment they put in money, they can put in 1 billion exploration, then they discover you have more, and then they will sell, farm out as they call it. For them, they will sell. We have seen that happen here. So how are our laws structured to make sure you capture these windfalls? The last time this happened, we had to go all the way to the UK, chasing gains, capital gains, and all sorts of things. And so where are we looking? And some of these things are happening even as we speak, that some of these companies listed on the stock exchange are possibly earning. I'm just saying possibly, but I know it's coming. Google is earning money from here. Who is going to tax Google for the money it made in Uganda? That's why I said these are global conversations. And we need to get into those spaces, that even as we add more exploration areas and the stock increases, don't wait for, hey, now the pipeline has taken the oil to Tanga, where is my money? You already can earn more money, but also you want to say, we are still struggling on how to get the oil from Bulisa. Now when I discover another deposit in Teso, how do I build a network that is going to link up all these things? You know, it's like a rat holes. You chase a rat here, it knows where to pass to get to the other side. So who is looking into that network even as we do more of the exploration? Shall we evacuate from Soroti or from Amuru and bring, because we're going to do one pipeline? Or are we going to join Kenya's, here there is oil in Tana, Turkana, and then take it to the other side? Now you need to be thinking that far to make a case at the global level so that you can be seen and funded. It's all a business case. Global level is not politics. These are business fellows. And remember, people pitching to them are so many. The Australians are pitching, the Venezuelans are pitching, the Russians are pitching, the Germans are pitching. So what is Uganda taking to these markets and these conversations? Do we even know who to go with and who to go to? Those for me are very important things, even as we continue to say now the right of way, EACOC, 90% design is done, construction is done. You can be kicked out, you can stall. So I think the real conversation of a strategic nature is still missing. Now that's no wonder we are now going back. So let's do more exploration. You haven't even caught this one, as they say, one bird in your hand is better than two out there. What are you doing with this? We are still dilly-dallying. Can we have financial closure on this particular one, and then begin to move on? But also, as they are mentioning, issues of human rights. And human rights is not just about those in the oil area. This oil can help us to protect other rights. We're discussing the rights of the elderly. Now when you grow old, of course your body is generating less cells. You're going to begin getting diseases you shouldn't have gotten. So how are we investing in right to health for the Karamojong, for somebody in Madi, so that they don't have to come to Kampala for cancer treatment? And cancer is that very funny disease. You come on Tuesday, they do your CBC, then you'll get your chemo tomorrow. So where did I spend the night? Who is looking after me? What if they say weekly? Now I can't travel back to Kawali to come back every Wednesday. Those are rights. So you can better off put some facility either in Kawali, or those oil can help us to meet all those things. That's why the Japanese have so many people above the age of 100. It's not because of what they eat, it's of what support do they get. If just to end on this is the population is telling us 0 to 17 years are 50%. That's 23 million Ugandans are 0 to 17. What are going to be their needs in the next 5 years, 10 years, in terms of accommodation, in terms of social services? They also want to travel. If they say they want to come and watch the game in Namboli, how do you give them? Digital spaces now allow us to give them education without confining. When Museveni came to power, Makere could admit 2,000 children. Then they said, some Museveni said, where do they have to sleep here? If I was in Makere College and Kampala High, I'm already within the vicinity of Makere. Can't we start a non-resident program. Then eventually a private students program. So how do we use digital spaces? People are doing online courses and graduating from foreign universities. So those are the things you want to be thinking in, so that when the oil money lands, it's speaking to people, even those not next to it, and protecting their rights.
Okay. Speaking of technologies, as Brian, you do make a complimentary to what Doctor has said, but also in there we want to talk about technology, and I know that you're focusing on technology and how it's cutting across the conversation of oil production and the deforestation campaign that you are in regards to the adaptation of the trend for us in Uganda. Let's talk into that.
Yeah, so just to add on to what the doctor is saying, we have the airport coming up in Kabale. Yeah, we are going to have all these planes coming with all this oil equipment, but the return journey, what is going to be filling up those aeroplanes? Now, Uganda is an agricultural economy. We should already be planning what can we export from these areas. Now, it has a trickle-down effect in terms of employment, in terms of making sure that we promote rural agricultural economy. Because don't forget, while we're talking about the oil, Uganda is still largely an agricultural economy. So we need to make sure that we tap into this into this advantage that all of a sudden that we have. Yeah. Now, also in the context of technology, the pipeline between Hoima and Tanga can have so many benefits, far-reaching than the oil that goes. In the route to Tanga, you have areas which don't have network coverage, for example. But by making sure that you have a fiber running from Hoima all the way to Tanga, you can start penetrating 4G capacity, so that someone in the rural area has very fast internet speeds. And once you have internet, then you're hooked onto the digital economy. Now, all these things are able to be funded because we now have this sudden resource. Okay. So we must tap into each and every avenue that we see that we can be able to use to make sure our people within the oil areas, within as a country, it's for the benefit of everyone. All right. Yes. All right. Technology can actually help in this goal. Yes.
All right. As we wrap up this conversation, I'm going to ask for closing remarks. Alana, I'd like you to speak into the social perspective. Doctor will speak about it from the economic perspective. What are the positives out of it? And of course, Brian will end with you, speak about the environmental perspective. Let's start with Alana.
I just think we need to get really intentional about making sure that these resources work for people. Botswana gave over 40%. She used it to get about 47.1% fiscal increase for public services. Ours may differ, but young people are struggling to pay the and you must really invest in public services, and you must look at the hurdles that come there, whether it's amending the law, whether, it's just beginning to have that conversation in a way that makes sure that they benefit. I love that both my co-panelists talked about the multiplier effects that come. Yes. When you invest in services like health, education, social protection, you're actually pushing not just inclusive growth, it's also going to actually stimulate growth. And it has this ripple effect. And there's a lot more social cohesion and peace, which you need, because like he said, we have seen many of our countries where their natural resources plagued by conflict. And so I think it's very, very important our policymakers take this to heart and begin to have a national dialogue around this, because we hear a lot about oil, we hear a lot about the human rights issues, which are very important. You must address them because that also affects oil. But we're not hearing so much about how it benefits people. And I think what ISA has been pushing for with this report, and it looks at what different countries have done. It has like 6 different country case studies. It shows it's possible to harness not just oil, but all these natural resources, the gold, the copper, the lithium, to actually improve the lives of your people. All right.
Doctor, what saith you in your closing remarks, including what the position of government is on this matter?
I think it's really, oil is, especially ours, is finite, even faster than anybody can think. It's not even in a generation, because the generation is 40 years. We're saying it's 20 years. Now, how do you make sure oil creates opportunities? And we can learn from the Middle East. Look at the things Ugandans who are going to the Middle East. They are not going to work in oil, but because they use their oil to create these other opportunities that even their citizens can't finish them. Every day we are sending people there to take advantage of those opportunities. What if we are creating them here? The guy I talked about didn't finish P7. I wish she had gone after senior force. She would be more useful to herself and to them. So let's create opportunities, because Ugandans are going for tourism in these areas of oil.
Yeah.
We are sending gold exports, which is now almost 40% plus of our total exports, bigger than coffee, to the Middle East. So what is it that the Middle East has done using their oil that we knew them for to now begin introducing these new subjects and dimensions? We can do that.
Okay. All right. And finally, Brian?
Yeah, so like all my colleagues have been saying, I think it's all about taking care of the opportunity that we have in our midst in a responsible manner that does not endanger the environment, whether that is forests or swamps. We must be able to conduct business in a responsible way that does not contribute to climate change paradigm. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Of course, also in closing, one of the dailies this morning, minerals, government loses billions over experts. I think that is something that all of you left out, that this conversation needs experts, legal experts, framework experts. You do have exploration experts, exportation experts, experts across all the chain. That's an investment that government needs to have. So oil activities have definitely brought into light a range of governance opportunities and challenges and expectations, especially from the local community. Local citizens are particularly concerned, especially about the maintaining and protecting of their rights, land being one of them, equitable distribution of oil revenues, and the hope that government does deliver on effective programs, effective laws, as well as interventions that do work for Uganda, and of course being a global player in the oil conversations. That brings us to the end of this conversation. Thank you so much for being with us.